So we talk a lot about how there are a bunch of coaches out there that help real estate agents build their businesses. They help them get clients, get people in the pipeline. But really, there's not a lot out there about what to do once you get those clients and how you get them across the finish line. So why do you think that is?
I think it's a great question because you're right. There's national programs and local programs, brokerage programs that really are designed to help people when they get into the industry learn how to get business, how to make cold calls and how to build your pipeline up, like you said, right? But there's like a huge gap from that point. Like, what do you do when you have the business, right? Because in order to get paid, it's not about getting the business, it's about getting the business across the finish line. And there really is a gap with that, right? I think that's the idea of continuing education though, right? In many
Right.
cases, people go like the purpose of continuing education is to help you develop the expertise on contracts and all the compliance stuff and all that stuff that isn't really sexy, right? The idea of like getting new business is really sexy, right? It's like fill the pipeline and get the leads and all that, and that's valuable. But we also have to be able to then take that business and give a good customer experience, to be able to do it the right way, to be able to negotiate deals in the middle of them and get them to the finish line. Otherwise, we don't get paid. And so that part is so critical and it's so underserved because, yeah, continuing education is great. But at the same time, it's often like, oh, I'm going to just go online and knock out my continuing education. It doesn't really help you that much in those kinds of scenarios. And on top of that, it's not customized. Like sometimes you need specific guidance for you. And of course, that's what your broker's supposed to be there for and everything else. But there's still so many gaps in that aspect of taking the business that we get, getting it from now I have the business, what the heck do I do with it? How do we actually get
Right.
this deal done? And so that's where we've tried to step in and create some sort of way and idea and to think about what kind of system do I have to have in place in order to get those deals across the finish line?
Right. So I've gotten my client to this point, and then you have all of the moving parts
Absolutely.
to get to the finish line
Yeah.
before you get paid.
And that's the stuff where you get in trouble, right? That's where the compliance problems come in. That's where deals bust because we have a contract problem. That's where, we get ourselves in a bad negotiation position or we don't handle something correctly. And that's where just those problems come in. And those are the things that are really challenging to deal with. And there's often not a great resource for people when they're in those tricky situations. I mean, yes, you can call a lawyer. Maybe you're going to get a quick response, maybe not. How much are you going to pay for it? And if you're the broker, I mean, who does the broker call when the broker has questions, right? Maybe you call your real estate commission. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you got a legal line, but it's this sort of disjointed, not cohesive system for how do I increase my expertise, increase my knowledge, get answers when I need them, get the resources that I need. And these are the kinds of things that we're trying to create a system around that.
Right. We've all been there. We've had a complicated transaction, right? Maybe it's your client, maybe it's, the client on the other side. So what do most agents do when they get into a complicated position or a transaction like that?
Yeah, and I think this is like step one of kind of our three components that we have to figure out is like, what do we do to solve these problems, right? I think most people, in my experience, is they start Googling, right? They go to Google and ask the question, and you might find some blog post or something out there. You might find a Reddit post that talks about it. Maybe they go to a Facebook group, right? Here in like where we're at, we've got a prominent Facebook group that's got a lot of people in it, and people will go there and ask for questions.
And people love to give answers.
People love to give answers. Sometimes they are confidently wrong, like they are confident, but they are wrong, They'll call a friend who may or may not know the answer. They throw it into AI these days, right? We go to ChatGPT and say, hey, Chat, how do I handle this? And man, I can show you so many examples of ChatGPT being wrong, right? And at the end of the day, like what it ultimately means is that we are wasting so much time to get unreliable answers, right? And that's the problem. So like we think about what kind of components that we need. Well, where do we go to get them and how do we know that they're reliable?
We talked about where do most agents go, but it's not always just about getting answers. Like, what else are we missing there? What are agents missing?
Yeah, I think there's an asset gap. And when we say assets, we mean like all the things that come along with a good client experience, but also the right kind of way to handle transactions, right? The checklists, the templates, the forms. And so people are often left with either what's provided by the real estate commission, right? Here they create a set of forms, or what's provided by their association. And then there's gaps from there because that does not cover everything, right? It is just, there's no way for that to cover everything. And so then how do we fill in those gaps? And we're either left trying to find some generic template online, people buying templates on Etsy and things like that, or they're trying to create something on their own, or again, going back to ChatGPT, trying to get it to do it for them. And these again are really unreliable. And so you're left creating assets for your business that, again, maybe you're not confident in, maybe you're not sure what's supposed to go into it. And so we don't have all those assets and tools and templates and forms that we need to make our business successful. And so that's another big gap that goes beyond just like, I need a reliable place to get answers. And then from there, it's like, one of the things we always try to talk about is foresight. Like I have to have the education and the experience to have foresight to say, okay, if something bad happens in the future, how can I have the foresight today to see that coming down the pipeline? How can I do things right today so I prevent problems next week? And that's the education problem, right? Because the only way to get that is either you have experience, which means you've gone through the hard time, or you get education on it so that you're ready when it's coming, right? You can then build that in. But again, this goes back to continuing education is often just checking the box. Right? Well, I got to get my 30 hours, so let me check the box and get my 30 hours. It's often generic, right? Especially if you just go online and get whatever CE is available, for cheap or whatever. It's generic. It doesn't really move the needle for you. And so the question is the education that you're getting just checking off the requirement, or are you actually getting education that is growing your expertise and your knowledge? And so those are two more like major problems that we have in terms of getting deals across the finish line. It's, I don't know where to go to get reliable answers quickly. I don't have all the assets and tools that I need. And I am not getting the education that's truly growing my expertise so that I'm ready for all the crazy stuff that happens in a real estate transaction. All three major gaps in most agents and brokers sort of system for taking the business that we get through those great lead generation systems. And we're not trying to downplay like the good coaches. We know lots of good coaches, right? Yeah. Super valuable. But then it's how do we get from there to that finish line? Those are three major gaps that we have.
Okay, so we've talked about, spending time looking for resources, knowing where to go for that, not knowing where to go for answers or being able to get the right answers. And then we've also talked about like maybe not getting quality education or even knowing what education we need. And so if these are the issues, if this is what's broken, then where do we go to get all those answers in one place?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the idea, right? Is so we've come up with what we think are three components to reliably getting deals across the finish line. Right. Because we're trying to figure out how do we love systems and things like that. So how do we systematize our process for getting deals across the finish line, right? And so you mentioned the three things, we've talked about those, and we're going to go through in separate videos each one of these components in more detail, because you have two options. You can put your system together yourself, and it needs to incorporate these three components, right? That's the idea. So we're sharing this for two purposes. One, to give you an idea of like, you need to have something that addresses each one of these three components of this getting across the finish line system. And of course, us selfishly, like we think we've created it. Right? Yeah. So we think we have created a unified system that is sort of your single source for all of these things, or you can put your own together, right? So if you're not, in Oklahoma, maybe this will be valuable for you, but if you're here, of course, we'd love for you to be a part of what we're doing. But we also want you to just think through like, how do you be successful in getting deals across the finish line, right? So again, there's three things. The first one is having a reliable place to get guidance when deals get complicated. Right. I mean, that's it. You have to have a reliable place. And that means you have to be able to get answers that are quick. You have to be able to get answers that are trustworthy, that you can rely on, that you feel good about, you're confident with, and that you're not guessing. right? And the thing is that you can't always be figuring it out on your own. You can't always be figuring it out alone or be waiting around for responses, because deals move fast. Like, I can't wait 3 days for an answer on something, you know?
Right.
And that's the reality. Like, you know, yes, I'm an attorney, have that legal background. And the reality is, like, everybody should have a relationship with a lawyer in the real estate business. But if it's like, I just need like a quick answer, they may not be available for that, right? And so you always have to have something where you can get a good, reliable answer quickly. And I think that's step one. Is it's not ChatGPT, it's not Google, it's not a Facebook group. You really have to have a sort of single source of truth that you feel good about relying on. And that's a key component that somebody's missing.
Yes.
The second thing is you need those assets, right? Yes, the real estate commission creates forms and they're great. And yes, the association provides some forms and many of them are great. And maybe your brokerage has some as well, but oftentimes we're left with these situations that come up and we don't have the tool, the asset, the resource that meets that need, right? If I'm a real estate broker, for example, starting my own brokerage, I need to have a policies and procedures manual in place, right? It's just like a necessary component
Right.
of this type of business. But then the question is, where do you get it, right?
Well, and how much time do you spend searching the internet for something that maybe will work, but maybe it won't? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
And is it something generic or is it tailored to what you need?
Right.
And then do you have, again, it goes back to the first one of when I have a question about developing it, who do I go to help me answer that question?
Yeah.
Right? Because yeah, you can go on Etsy and find policies and procedures templates. I'm sure you can go do it.
They're out there.
They're out there. But again, is that then like what happens when you have a question? Is it right for your state law? Is it right for your specific regulation and those kinds of things? And then again, there's contract issues that come up that there's not a form for, right? And so where do you go get that? Right? Because if you create it on your own and you're not sure about it, or, you know, who knows, right? And you want to keep that from being a problem for you, keep it from being a problem for your client. And so step two is you got to have that asset library. You got to have a place where you can get them. And if it doesn't exist, who's going to make it for you? And so you want that expertise there to help you with those assets that you might need to fill in those gaps when there's things, and also things that just make you look good, right? Things like we offer in our program, like, you know, our contract explainer videos that,
Right.
you know, you need to be having a process for explaining the contract to your clients. What is that? You know, we've created videos where we're explaining the contract to them so you can send it to them and it's us explaining it to them, and it helps take that load off of you. It makes things a little more streamlined. They can do it on their own time and it's something that you can trust, right? So how do you have those kinds of assets that not only, you know, fill in those gaps, but also just make your life easier and make you look good.
Yeah.
Right? So that's something else that I think is a important component of this like assets piece that people are missing.
Yeah. And then we also talked about education.
Yeah.
You know, quality education and knowing what education that you need and that's timely and relevant. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, here's the reality. So for continuing education, like we provide a lot of continuing education. It's nice because we like, you know, for all of our community members, we give them free access to all of our continuing education that we do. But we get that continuing education approved on 3-year cycles.
Right.
Right. So we might be teaching a class that we got approved 2 years ago that like the content is largely the same, right? We haven't, you know, we update it and we change it and all that sort of stuff, but like it's also produced to like go out to all these different places and teach it on large scale multiple times, repeatable. And that's good and that's valuable. And the thing is that like seek out the education that you know is good quality for that, but that tends to be more generic. And so that's an important piece of it. But then we also, for our community members, like get into the weeds on stuff, like really specific nuanced stuff. Like we'll take a single court case and spend an hour unpacking it, right?
Right.
And that's something that is not going to be in continuing education classes, right? But that could have a profound impact on some piece of your business if you don't know about it, right? But then also beyond that is just like the discussions that we have, you know, because part of education is learning from other people, right? So it's like somebody else asks a question, you hear the answer and you're like, I didn't even know I had that question, right? I didn't
Yeah.
know that was a question that I had. And so that's another piece of it. And something that we try to accomplish with like our office hours, for example, where we just get a group of maybe a dozen of us together and we just talk through issues. And there's so much learning that happens by us just discussing all the weird stuff that comes up. And now everybody else gets to learn from somebody else's weird scenario. And so that's another piece of the education part that I don't think gets talked about, is that nice part of, it's not networking, but it's like, let's get together and talk about complicated
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a group of professional minds coming together to figure out issues together. And that's we talk about current real estate commission cases and try to stay up on that and stay educated on that as well. So
Absolutely.
there are a lot of moving parts in there.
This is where we
Yeah.
say, like, you can either learn from case studies, which is what we
Yeah.
do, or you can be the case
Yeah.
study, right? And so that's where our education piece is, trying to take the real world stuff that happens that causes problems for other people, share that with everybody else so that they can then learn and be ready for it.
Right. And it just brings our industry to a higher standard.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that is something that is a gap that goes way beyond just checking the box, the minimum number of CE credits that you need to have,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, so you've talked about the three areas where people seem to be lacking, or agents seem to be lacking, and that we need to have systems in place to fill that gap. And you have hinted that we have a system in place that we think is great and could be a great resource for real estate agents. Do you want to tell us a little bit about RPro Access and give some details there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it starts with that question of, if we've got these three components, right? Where do you get your answers? Where do you get your assets? Where do you get your education? And what do those three things look like? Do you feel good about them? Yes, you can piecemeal those things together, right? I can go figure out where I'm going to get my education and all that. I can figure out where I'm going to, how I'm going to create these assets and everything else. And that's where we've created RPro Access, right? It's for Oklahoma real estate brokers and producing agents. It's not really designed for necessarily like a brand new agent.
Right.
The brand new agents, we want to take and put with our good coaches that we know to help them get the business. And then once they're getting the business, then we want them to come to Access so that they have this cohesive system that's a single source, one place to go where they know they can get all three of these components, right? And so RPro Access is the professional guidance, right? When you have contracts and compliance, we have a full brain trust to help you with this, right? One, you ask a question in our Q&A space and you're gonna get an answer from me, right? And yes, I'm an attorney. No, it's not legal advice, but you get somebody who's a broker and attorney and get that level of tailored guidance to help you through that problem, as well as the collective experience of our small community, right? Because we want to keep this small by design. And so we've created this wonderful small community of people. And by small, I mean, we got 125 people in there right now,
Right.
that are just experts, professionals, that will chime in with extra questions and their experience. And so you have this place to get professional guidance, and through this, this wonderful community that we've created. You also get the professional assets, right? We've got three different areas of assets that are our broker toolkit that's specific for our brokers, that have things like a policies and procedures template guide, where we've also, yes, I'm not going to encourage you to go to ChatGPT and figure it out on your own, but we've created a custom GPT to help guide you through it.
Right.
But then we also have that Q&A space where we can back you up when you have questions for it, right? We have things like, our client-facing resources where you get those contract explainer videos. We've got a video that explains the buyer-broker agreement. And we've got, for example, a guide we created for sellers to help them understand what stays with the property so you can avoid those fights at closing, right? Things like that are client-facing that make you look good. And then our contract library, because again, the contract forms that we have do not fit every scenario. And so we've created a bunch of contract terms and guide templates and things like that fill in a lot of those gaps. And so you get this single all-in-one system for getting deals closed, right? A quick place to get reliable answers, a place to get the assets, and a place to get that important tactical education that really gives you the professional growth and a competitive edge. Because we get into the weeds on stuff. We pay attention to what happens at the real estate commission, what happens in court cases, regulations that are changing, so that you are the first to know about this sort of stuff. And we do the analysis of it, and we give you this is what you need to know so that you can be successful and avoid the problems, right? So we have some of that foresight for you.
Yeah, it helps you to be proactive, right? To get ahead of the issue. And then if you do have a complicated situation, you can troubleshoot through it.
And the idea is that we do the lifting for you. Like
Yes.
this is all done for you because again, you can figure out where you're going to go get answers to your questions and figure out who your reliable source is. You can create all your own assets and those sorts of things. And you know, when something comes up, you can go pay somebody to create it or figure out how to create it on your own. You can go find the education that matters for you. You can stay up to speed on and watch all the real estate commission meetings and pay attention to what's happening in the courts and all that. Or you can come join us and come along with us and we do all that heavy lifting for you, right? And that's kind of the idea there. And so like, I want you to keep watching this though, so this gives you an idea, but we're also doing this not just to like tell you and hire, like come work with us. That's what we want, obviously. But we also want to tell you this philosophy behind how this system works so that you can build your own. If that's what you want to do, if you want to like figure it out and create your own system, we're going to give you that insight into deeper levels of what needs to be a part of each one of these three components so that they're good, right? So that they work for you. And so keep watching this series so that you can kind of see like more of what we're talking about, but also just you can build your own system if you want and understand what it takes to successfully go from getting business to getting it across the finish line.
Right.